So I had lots of clients and students who would come to me who were in search of a meaningful pathway forward, who said, well, I don't know what to do. And I would say, well, what do you want for your life? And they say, well, I really don't know. And so then I learned two things about that. The first is, don't do nothing. That's a big mistake, because all you do is get older and weaker and you withdraw more. And so even if you don't know what to do, pursuing nothing is a very bad idea. You have no hope then, because hope comes from pursuit, and you're anxious because you need to specify a path. So you have no hope and you're anxious if you do nothing. So nothing is not the answer. That means nihilism is not the answer. And I don't think that's shocking to people, but it's worth laying it out conceptually.
Seems uncontroversial to me, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, you're not a nihilist, so, or possessed by that, except probably sporadically. So then the next proposition was something like this. Well, look, you don't know what to do. So why don't we just look and see what other people do that seems to work? And maybe you don't have to do any of these things or all of these things, but if you don't know where to start, here's a good place to start. And this is also something conservatives can offer. It's like, well, here's the basic template for a reasonably tolerable life. We'll begin with that low bar. So there's 7 or 8 major domains. So you don't know what to do with your life. Well, let's break your life down. Probably you want an intimate partner. Most people do. Now, you might not, but probably you do, even if you think you don't. And so you might be one of those exceptions, but don't assume that to begin with, because that's an uncomfortable place to be if it's true. Now, maybe you're a radically creative genius like Leonardo da Vinci or Picasso, and you're so idiosyncratic that you can't bind yourself to any one person. But, you know, they were 1 in a billion, and probably you're not. Now, maybe you are, but that's a whole different kettle of fish. Probably you want a family of some sort, parents, you want to have a relationship with them, siblings, children. Most people have children. That's the best relationship you're ever going to have if you're fortunate enough to engage in it. And so you probably need a vision for that of some sort. Friends, helpful to have some friends. You could develop a vision for that. You need a job or a career, because otherwise you die, and people think you're useless. They shun you, and then you die. That's a bad outcome, unless that's what you're after. You should regulate your behavior in relationship to temptations like drug and alcohol abuse and sex, because short-term impulsive hedonic gratification doesn't play out well across time, and it tends to make you unpopular. So that's not a good recipe for long-term progress into the future. You should think hard about doing something on the civic front. You should take care of yourself mentally and physically. You should have a plan for that. You need an educational plan, because there's probably something you could learn and get better at, and that doesn't have to be academic. It could be extremely practical or creative. And you should figure out how to make productive, generous use of the time you have when you're not working. And so that's like a conservative vision, right? Because it fleshes out the generic landscape of human striving. And it's a good place to start if you don't know where to start. You could start with one of those things and move towards it, or 2 or 4, and maybe you don't have to do all of them. But my experience as a clinician has been that if you are failing on all 8 of those fronts, you're not depressed. You just have a terrible life, right? So conservatives can say, traditionalists can say, here's the basic template. Here's the responsibility you can find in meaning. Well, now you got to cobble together something idiosyncratic and unique to yourself. That's the making the archetype manifest in the confines of your own life. But that's the basic way forward. And you know, we've found if students do an exercise like that, a writing exercise, and answer all 8 of those questions, the probability that they'll drop out of university in the first year, about 40% of kids do, roughly speaking, in the first year or 2, the probability that they'll drop out is decreased 50%. So just thinking through, just developing a vision on those fronts is highly motivating, and it keeps anxiety at bay, and it unites people psychologically, and it helps them identify with the pathway forward. It's not optional. So, and that's an antidote to the death of God in some real way too, right? That journey towards an integrated single point of meaning. We should talk about the religious front a bit, because we started talking about it with the woke religion. You know, you just described yourself as not religious. And so, but you're concerned about false religions, right? Is that a reasonable way of thinking about it?
Yeah, well, I'm concerned about bad religions, and bad religions take many forms. To me, this seems like a bad one. And religion...
Okay. Does that...
Sorry, go for it.
Does that imply that there's a good religion?
I think
does it imply that?
Yeah, well, for me it does, in the sense that there are forms of religion that are beneficial to society and to the individuals who participate them, in my opinion, even though I myself cannot force myself to believe something I don't believe, right? But this religion, I mean, it has all the worst elements of other religions, and on top of that, it doesn't do what most other religions do, which is offer an actual route for redemption, an actual route for atonement. Because even if you participate in wokeness fully and you say, I'm not, but I am a straight white man and I am guilty and the sins of the world rest upon my shoulders, what can you do? You can never purify yourself because you can't be transracial, because that's whatever that is, right? That's the worst form of racism. What can you do? You can't atone. No matter how many times you kneel to BLM or whatever else it is that you do, you're never going to be clean or purified. It is a religion that says you, Jordan Peterson, as a straight white man, are guilty forever, and all you can do is apologize for the rest of eternity. And that's it. That seems to me like quite a bad religion.
Okay. So let's play this out. And you can help me with this, and you can take the atheistic stance and hammer away at me, okay? And I'll push back.
I'm not an atheist, by the way, but go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, let's start by characterizing. You said you're not religious. You're not an atheist, but you're not religious. So maybe you could clarify that first.
I'm agnostic. I have no idea what's going on.
Okay. Fine. So it's agnosticism. All right. So we're playing with the proposition that there are clearly pathological forms of belief and at a deep level, pathological forms of religion. Okay. So we'll start with that premise. And then the counter premise is that there is something that's the opposite of that. And you started to flesh that out in one dimension, which is that if it's a genuine religion, in quotes, then one of the things it offers is an actual pathway to atonement, which means that you have some means of dealing with your sinful inadequacy that doesn't crush you. Okay, so let me tell you something that Carl Jung said about the Catholics. This is very cool. He said he really regarded the Catholic confession as a form of, what would you say, God's mercy manifested in the world, symbolically speaking. And here's why. Okay, you're going to do stupid and cruel and unworthy things, even as you define them. So you're going to be guilty before yourself. Forget about what other people think. You might also be guilty on that front, but you're definitely being guilty in relationship to your own conscience. And then you have to deal with the fact that you're not who you should be. And that can crush you. Certainly that crushes people who are depressed. It crushes people who are anxious, and it definitely crushes people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, because they often develop PTSD because they watch themselves do something terrible. So, all right, so now there's an existential problem, is you got to stumble forward with your inadequacy. Now, if you're Catholic, you can go to the church and you can say once a week or however often you want to, here's a bunch of ways I'm really stupid and they've hurt me, and I'm trying to detail them out completely. And in principle, I'm trying to rectify those faults, right? First by their admission, and second by the determination not to propel them forward. And then the priest says, okay, as far as God's concerned, that's good enough. And you have to go do these rituals of atonement, and the slate's wiped clean for the week. And you're going to go out and be a fool again, but you get to start again. And so you're proposing that one of the hallmarks of a genuinely healthy religion, assuming such a thing exists, a fundamental set of beliefs, is that there has to be a pathway forward to the rectification of inadequacy and flaw. Is that fair enough?
That is a positive aspect of religion that I can see, yes.